What's up, Rangers fans? Welcome back for a breaking episode here at Rangers Review, episode 26, as a matter of fact. We just recorded, as we know, getting ready for, of course, the entry draft that is tonight. We recapped the expansion draft yesterday as well, and some pending trades that we could see happen. And lo and behold, something that was rumored for a while did, in fact, come to fruition, and that is Pavel Buchnevich has been traded from the New York Rangers to the St. Louis Blues in return for forward Sammy Blais and a 2022 second-round pick. That is not sitting well with most Ranger fans at this point in time for more reasons than one. So, again, I just want to say thank you, everyone that's first chiming in the stream as we're doing this live. We have a lot to unfold here over this next, I'd say, half hour to an hour. It does not look good off the forefront. I think we can all say that, Steven. So let me hear your initial reaction to this trade. I'll share my take and what could possibly be the bigger outcome out of this than what we currently see, and so much more.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a fan of this trade for multiple reasons. Not that I don't want to trade Buchnevich. I think it's time to move on. Not that I don't want to acquire Sammy Blais. I just think that Drury should have taken his time with this. Yeah, you want to trade Buchnevich, and people have said this is the clear salary, but he's an RFA. There's no salary to be cleared. There's no rush here. If you want to trade him, you can trade him next month. If you're going to trade him the day of the draft, which is basically the start of the offseason, in my opinion, it has to be for an offer that blows you away. A second-round pick in 2022 and Sammy Blais, a fourth-line winger who, yes, brings some physicality, but that's not a package that blows me away for Pavel Buchnevich, who's coming off a career year. And I like Sammy Blais. I think Sammy Blais is a guy that is really going to do well. Was really going to do well for the Rangers, but his value is probably a third or fourth round pick. So why, if you want to go after Sammy Blais, then talk to St. Louis and say, hey, okay, we're interested in Sammy Blais, and see what you can get. See if you can get him for a draft pick. This makes no sense. This is the equivalent of trading in your Mercedes for a secondhand family car that you have the money for to buy anyway. Yeah, look, and most of all, I think Drury just should have waited here. I'm not saying that he would have gotten a better offer per se, but to make this trade this early on, the offer has to be better because you have time to make a trade later on. And the draft pick is 2022, so we cannot even say that this trade was made ahead of the draft tonight because we're acquiring a pick that we have to use in a couple of hours. That's not the case either. Boy, and I think what makes it worse is that 20 minutes earlier, Rasmus Ristolainen was traded for a 14th overall pick and a second-round pick. It's just underwhelming. If you look at the other trades, Oliver Ekman-Larsson was just traded to the Vancouver Canucks with a deal including Jay Beagle and Garland, and I think the 9th overall pick. There's a lot of moving pieces going in opposite directions there. Yeah. So the trades are finally kicking off now. But yeah, like I said, if this was the clear salary, it makes no sense. You could have traded Buchnevich next month. There was no rush here. This is not a player with $6 million already allocated for this upcoming season.
And that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around currently, because this comes off as a strict desperation tactic by Drury. I don't think there's really any denying that, because Sammy Blais, I like him too. I like him. I know that he's had some help with St. Louis and both in their cup run. He's been dealing with some injuries throughout his career, but there's upside to him. I'm not against adding him whatsoever, but I'm against, like you, this kind of deal, because from the forefront, it makes absolutely zero sense. And I will say this, as much as we have had our gripes on being up and down about the whole Jack Eichel fiasco, we may very well see a deal tonight, and I will be even more pissed off, to be quite frank, if we don't see something of similar magnitude happen, because why else are you doing this? You're right, though. He's an RFA now. It's not like he currently has a contract on the books that you have to worry about. So what led this desperation from a guy like him, from Chris Drury? I don't know. But obviously, as we see here in the chat, as we're doing this live stream, it's definitely making a lot of Rangers fans turn their heads, be like, what, Chris, why are you doing this? But here's the thing. Just because we don't necessarily know what is next doesn't mean it's going to be end all. I do think that good is still going to come out of this in the end, and I do think the Rangers are by all means, not even remotely close done, because they can't be. Chris Drury, his first major move as the New York Rangers general manager, far more significant than adding Gaudreau and signing him to that deal that not a lot of Rangers fans love either. This cannot be the starting point for him without there being a drastic move to go forward. For himself, for the face of the Rangers, for James Dolan, everyone. If they want to keep making themselves look like a mockery and how desperate they were in getting rid of JD and Gordon back towards the end of the season, okay. But obviously that isn't the smart route to go about things. So no, I don't think the Rangers are done at all. And I don't think this is even going to be the one time we have an episode today at the time of recording this. So guys, keep that in mind. If something else happens with the Rangers tonight during the entry draft specifically, we will, of course, be doing another live stream, but we're going to see what happens then. But Pavel Buchnevich, I talked about this yesterday. I absolutely love the man. He fits the St. Louis Blues play style tremendously. He's the perfect forward when it comes to his 200-foot game. Exactly what they're looking for. Talk about a Vladimir Tarasenko replacement. It doesn't get any better than that if you ask me. While Tarasenko's still with the club, obviously, they hit a slam dunk on this deal in every way, shape, or form. The Rangers have been trying to get rid of him for a while now.
Yeah. This is a win for St. Louis. There's no other way around it. Great move for them. I just don't understand this. It feels like an overreaction to the Tom Wilson thing. You know, I was on board with getting Barclay Goodrow. That made sense. You know, you get a good bottom six player in. It's going to cost you a 7th-round pick, and then you sign him for an AAV that might be a little too high or a contract that might be a little too long. But now you're giving up your top-line winger for a 4th-line winger and a 2nd-round pick in next year's draft. It just doesn't make sense. And also, you're going to put a lot of pressure on Kakko and Kravtsov now, more so than I thought it was initially going to be the case, because I thought we were going to get at least a promising player in return for Buchnevich. I wasn't expecting Robert Thomas or Jordan Kyrou or whatever, but I was expecting at least something to build on. Sammy Blais, for as much as I like him, he's 25 years old. He's not going to magically develop into more than what he is right now. And can we use him? Yeah, of course we can. But like I said, if you wanted Sammy Blais, you call up St. Louis and you say, okay, here's our 2nd-round pick next year. If you really want to overpay for Sammy Blais, you go, here's our 2nd-round picks next year for Sammy Blais. And they would take that hands down, no question. Now you're giving up your top-line winger for a return that, honestly, this feels like the Carl Hagelin trade in 2015, but that one at least I could understand, because they really wanted to acquire some draft picks, and they got a draft pick, the 2nd-round pick, for the draft that day. Now we're acquiring a pick for next year. So why the rush? Why are we rushing into making this trade for an asset for a draft pick that we're only going to use 12 months from now? It just doesn't make sense. If you wanted to trade him, fine, but trade him next month. The offer's not going to be worse than what you got today. That's my issue.
And that's our assumption, at least. And after we saw the deal, of course, with Ristolainen and getting a 1st and a 2nd, it's come on now. Are you joking, Pavel? I get it, he's an RFA, but the Blues aren't trading for him without any belief that they won't be able to actually extend him. That's the beauty about being an RFA. You know, for the most part, it's very rare where teams still can't come to a deal after acquiring one. And you get a guy who just came off of a career season, basically a point per game. That's how good he was. Still young, still in his early, now getting to his mid-20s, as we know. But you get Sammy Blais, who, don't get me wrong, has shown flashes of some positive signs, has playoff experience, as we know. He had 15 points in 36 games last year with St. Louis, including 8 goals and 7 assists. And apparently to Vince Mercogliano, who's one of the most notable beat writers for the Rangers, did just state over Twitter over the past 20 minutes at the time of recording this live that there is belief from the Rangers' standpoint of potentially having Sammy Blais in the top 6, that they feel there's upside there. That does not make sense to me at all. I hope that's bullshit, because that really sounds like it. Because why are you doing that when you have Kakko and you have Kravtsov? That does not add up to me whatsoever.
Look, if Sammy Blais, seriously, if Sammy Blais is a consistent top 6 player and he hits 40 points in a single season, I'll do a giveaway of a Sammy Blais jersey on my Twitter account. It's not going to happen.
Yep.
And like I said, I like Sammy Blais. I like what he brings to the Rangers, and I think it's something we need. But oh man, this is like trading Panarin to get Yanni Gourde. You know, it just doesn't make sense. And like I said, it feels like an overreaction to the Tom Wilson thing, fueled by Dolan pushing to make something happen now. It's like Dolan's like a toddler who's really impatient and he's tired of playing with the same toy. You know, the Knicks are doing well, and he's finally letting go of the Knicks, and all of a sudden the Knicks are doing well. What does that tell you? And now he gets involved with the Rangers, and man, if they mess up this rebuild, it's going to be rough. But look, the other thing is we're probably still. I'm going to look this up quickly. The quote: "We're probably still in the in the running for Eichel."
We absolutely are. There's no way. I've seen reports from Frank Saravelli how the Rangers are still very much in it, and that while things haven't drastically changed, it feels like this is the Rangers bidding war to lose.
Look, and here's the thing: they need to do something else today, otherwise this trade is even worse. So it has to be Eichel, but Darren Drager was on WGR 550 today, and he said, as far as Jack is concerned, a good Rangers source yesterday thought there was a slim chance it was going to work with the New York Rangers. As to why it was considered slim, it had to do with what the Sabres were looking for in the trade. And then he quotes, "I had a package thrown at me that included Lundqvist or Schneider, plus Kravtsov, plus Hedel, plus a first-round pick. I threw that by the Rangers, and they basically laughed. It was too much." So we know what the Sabres want, and we know that the Rangers are not going to give this up. You're not going to give up Hedel, Kravtsov, and one of Schneider and Lundqvist, and then add a first-round pick. That makes no sense. You're going to take on a $10 million contract for the next 5 years without any salary retention, and you're going to only send young players on entry-level contracts and a draft pick in return. I know Hedel's RFA, but he's going to be cheap for the next couple of years. It makes a lot of sense for Buffalo, sure. But now after this Buchnevich trade, I don't know, man. I don't know what Drury is going to cook up now.
And there's more concern from Buffalo's standpoint because look at the haul they just got for Risto. So how much more of an asking price is it for a guy like Eichel? If that's the case, they literally got the bag for him. Like they could not have done that deal better. And I know that Sam Reinhart's been connected with the Flyers as well. I don't know if that'll actually come to fruition, but okay, I'm really upset about this deal. But from a realistic side point, putting all my personal attachment to Buch aside, because I love Buch. We all do. We all love Buchnevich. Been following him literally since he's been like 18, 19 years old. It's been a while now. But if you get into what this means for the Rangers going forward, it has to again mean that something bigger is going to happen. And if this is the last time that you and I are having a conversation tonight, I think we have a little bit of a problem. I genuinely do. So. Chris Drury, I'm not going to say he's a bad GM or anything like that yet. Trust me, guys. As much as this is not a good deal from the forefront, we cannot be getting ahead of ourselves here. Okay, There's a whole offseason to be had. So if the Rangers do in fact land Jack Eichel and land him at a reasonable price, and it is explained that Buchnevich went in hand with this or something of similar value. That is, of course, going to lessen the load completely to us Rangers fans on what has just transpired. It just looks really bad right now. It's reasonable to
look, what it comes down to is this. I wanted the Rangers to trade Buchnevich. I would have been very happy with the Rangers acquiring Sammy Blais. But to put that all in one trade makes no sense. And don't get me started on the second-round pick. This isn't the NFL. Second-round picks are not worth that much. In the NHL, you're talking about 17, 18-year-old players at the time of the draft where you have to make your pick. This isn't the NFL where they're 22, 23 years old. They just went through college for 4 years and they can step into the league right away. Second-round picks in the NHL are not worth that much. So it's basically Buchnevich for Sammy Blais and a Magic Bean. Honestly, this makes no sense. If you want a Sammy Blais, then trade a pick for him because it's sorry. I don't know. I don't understand. I think someone said on Twitter. I haven't really checked to verify, but I think someone said on Twitter that Buchnevich had more points in 4 of his NHL seasons than Sammy Blais has in 4 years in the NHL. In 4 individual seasons, Buchnevich has outscored Sammy Blais' career totals. So we're not getting him for the production. So you're getting him for the size. Man, it makes no sense.
Yeah. And again, though, to all my Rangers fans that are currently listening to this live or listening to this on replay for our latest episode of Rangers Review, and Steven, we don't have our previous Rangers Review that'll be podcast form. There wasn't even a point, okay, because it was basically leading up to a potential deal. So this one, I would assume, is going to be going on podcast form probably either later today or the following day. That being is currently July 23rd. But guys, I know that a lot of people are really reacting, a little overreacting, no less. It's upsetting. That's all I can say. Pavel Buchnevich has been I've been a massive fan of his. I think we all have. It always sucks. And you also have to realize, too, from a locker room perspective, the Rangers are not even remotely close to being done because look at what you just broke up KZB. You just took 2 of the Rangers' most pivotal players on the roster, not named Artemi Panarin, Kreider, and Zibanejad's best friend, along with other players on the team's best friend, away. Like, that's going to have significant impact on them. So you need to make sure that you can shore this up the best you can. I get it. It's a business. But still, it's not like the Rangers are selling off, that they're starting to rebuild again, which led to the likes of losing Zook and Hayes and Lundqvist buyout and, Fast not coming back, all these different things. Broussard even won it all for start kind of thing, all those factors. So it's different now. So we have to keep that in mind that the Rangers, if they're going to mess up the locker room the way they just did, they need to make sure it's for worthwhile in the end because they're going to benefit more here. So is that going to be Jack Eichel? Is that going to be someone else? I don't know, but I do feel that we are going to have answers very soon.
Look, in 2015, we traded Carl Hagelin for a second-round pick and Emerson Edom.
Yes.
Buchnevich is better than Carl Hagelin was at the time.
Absolutely.
It's no question. They're both RFA, so that situation is the same. I don't understand how the only return we got is a 4th-line winger. That makes no sense to me. This is basically Emerson Edom with a little bit more size. And you're going to put a lot of pressure on the young kids now. That was already going to be the case, but I remember yesterday saying if the Rangers don't make any further moves, they're a better team than they were last season. That's no longer the case because they need to improve in other areas to make up for losing Buchnevich. You're replacing Howden with Goudreau. That's a net positive. Now you're replacing Buchnevich with Sammy Blais. That's no. If the Rangers think Sammy Blais has a future in the top 6, who's he going to play over in the top 6? Let's assume we trade for Eichel. Who's he going to kick out of the top 6? It's not going to be Panarin. It's not going to be Lafreniere. It's not going to be Zibanejad or Eichel. Kakko and Kravtsov are better than Sammy Blais, not even close. I don't know. If that's what the Rangers are really thinking about Sammy Blais, then they probably have mixed up 2 players.
Yeah. And again, though, like I said,
they're probably looking at Robert Thomas instead.
Yeah. And again, emotions were high going into this. Like any other Ranger fan, we just want answers. Okay. Again, though, I feel comfortable. We are going to get answers, but it's important to look at here, though, as you mentioned, even if the Rangers find themselves making a bigger deal tonight, we desperately need to find out what has led this urgency on Buchnevich to what you said, because I think that is by far the most important thing. If Buch had already signed a new deal with this team, they did a sign and trade because they need to get rid of that contract. Okay, perfectly understand if you need to do more of a dump there because you know that you're adding a guy with upwards of $10 million a year. 100%, no argument whatsoever. But that just isn't the case here. So that is why we're probably head scratching more than anything. It would hurt me to see Buch get salary dumped and not get that great of a return. But in the end, that has more logical reasoning in my mind, where even though you're getting lesser on a guy, you're doing it because you drastically need to make a deal now to get rid of him. You've been trying to get rid of him for a couple of weeks now. And in return, you're adding a guy that's going to have a more significant impact, we would assume, at the center position. So that is really the biggest question mark for you and I both right now. What caused this urgency? Because it doesn't really have salary implications.
It really feels like a Glenn Sather trade, to be honest.
Oh, don't say that, Steven.
Guess who's back? Who's back? No, this feels like a Glenn Sather trade. It's the Hagelin trade all over again, but worse. That's all I'll say. That's the last I'll say about it. Let's hope they make another trade, because if we go into the draft and we draft 15th overall, I'll be excited about who we pick, but that's not the goal here. So we'll see. So far, Dolan got his wish of what he wanted. Change. There's change. I don't know if this is going to push us in the right direction, though. We'll see.
Okay, so I think with that being said, we've addressed everything there's to know about this trade to this point. So for the next 10 to 15 minutes, guys, we'll be taking questions before we get out of here. Again, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode because I think we both have both hope and belief that this will not be the last time that we have an episode tonight for Rangers Review. So again, guys, I appreciate.
Sorry, before we do the questions, let me quickly talk about the trade that was reported now. Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Connor Garland to the Vancouver Canucks for Jay Beagle, Louis Eriksson, Antoine Roussel, and the 9th overall pick tonight.
Yep.
And the Coyotes are retaining $1.2 million on Ekman-Larsson's contract for the next 6 years.
Wow.
That's big.
Yeah. Canucks, they need to make sure that they can get locked up. Elias, obviously, but they got OEL, and it's not his entire contract because it's not pre-contracted at all. And they're also getting Connor Garland, who's been one of the better players for the Coyotes for a couple of years now.
That's a player I would have been interested in, in exchange for Buchnevich.
I'm not again. No, to be quite honest, I'm not interested in OEL's contract. I'm glad the Rangers didn't go down that route.
I'm not talking about Ekman-Larsson. I'm talking about Garland, Connor Garland.
Oh, Garland. Yeah. No, Garland is not someone I would have been to get. But remember, Coyotes did this because they're trying to get salary off the books. They're not trying to get an RFA that they know is going to cost them quite a bit on a longer-term deal in Buchnevich. So, keep those things in mind. But a lot of crazy trades today, all kind of happening at once. As you guys know, I cover the New York Mets on Wardy NYM. That's what I'm most known for. Had to cancel. Was going to be doing an in-game live stream tonight at the time of recording this, but no. Mets made a trade as well. They added themselves a solid rotation piece. So we've got moves going in both the baseball world because the baseball trade deadline is next Friday, literally a week away. So I'm going crazy with that. Then the Rangers have the audacity to make moves today too. It's too much for me, Steven. This is disrespectful. All right. I should have gotten a better notice at this. That's all I can say. But now with saying that, guys,
let's do some questions.
Let's just take some questions now, okay? Because we're going to stay in for another 10, 15 minutes, and we're going to head out, and hopefully we'll be back streaming later tonight after the draft begins, or maybe right before the draft. Here's one question, Steven. If something does happen in the draft for the Rangers, do you think it'll actually happen in the draft, or it's like when the picks happen and be like, oh, we have a trade, that kind of thing, or do you think it'll happen right before the draft?
It'll probably happen before the draft. A big trade like this is not something you usually see during the first round.
And the Rangers, it's crazy because outside of them moving picks, they've never traded their first round pick before, like on the day of the draft like this. So I don't know. Times are different, right? We're kind of seeing changes, so maybe this will be part of change.
Yeah.
So keep those things in mind as well, guys. So we see a lot of questions. So we're gonna hop right to them, everybody. Again, thank you so much for being here for another episode of Rangers Review. Let's see here. I think that they will announce we will have a trade. That's what I want to happen. I think we can all agree on that. Chris Frost says, do you think the Rangers try to get the second overall pick? No. With picks 15 and other second round picks? No. The Rangers are not moving up in this draft whatsoever. They're done doing that. Done considering that in rebuild years.
It's also not. We don't have the assets to make that happen unless you include Lafreniere or Kakko. The second overall pick, as enticing as it would be to get Beniers, because that's a player a lot of fans are excited about. We don't have the assets we want to give up to make that happen. If you have the 4th or 5th overall pick, then you could make it happen. You could trade up a couple of spots, but from 15 to 2, it's too big of a gap.
Yeah. I like I said, I just don't see it happening. So David says here, what do you think of an Eichel package could look like now? I don't really think it changes much than what we've believed. No. If there's one thing I will say, I'm getting a little bit of an unfortunate feeling from the Rangers side of things that they might overspend a little bit for Eichel if they do land him, given what Ristolainen received and Haig, I believe, and then a first and a second round pick. You know, I will be pretty upset, I will say, if Niels Lundqvist is traded today. I will be honest. Kravtsov is one where I can live more with it. Niels is someone where I'm going to have an uncomfortable feeling about. So
here's
obviously you feel that way too.
About that package, though, you know, because Drager said that the package with Hedel, Kravtsov, and one of the two right-handed defensemen and the first-round pick was laughed at, and then they hung up the phone. I think Strom's going to be involved in it for sure, because then we need to clear a little bit more salary before we make this happen. If Strom's involved, Hedel's probably not going to be involved, so then it would be Kravtsov. And then I could see Jones and the first-round pick. I don't see them including Lundqvist or Schneider unless, and we don't know about this, but I was talking to someone else about it earlier today. We don't know how the Rangers feel about Braden Schneider. Are they still really like him, or do they see him as, you know, is this like really the pick that Gorton and JD traded up for, and does the current regime not really see it the same way? Who knows? Yeah, and the same thing could be said for Lundqvist. So we simply don't know. I put up the Buchnevich jersey because he gets traded, and I put up the Lundqvist jersey because if he gets traded, I won't get that opportunity again.
So and you're wearing one as we speak.
Sorry?
And you're wearing a Niels jersey as we speak.
And I'm wearing a Niels Lundqvist jersey as well. Yeah. I'm going a bit crazy today. It's you know, it's a long wait for the draft to happen. But if the Rangers are in on Eichel, I don't think Chris Drury is going to budge on what Kevin Adams wants. I think Kevin Adams wants a bigger package from the Rangers than from the Minnesota Wild because general managers are still idiots.
He does. And what I've seen reported earlier today is that the Sabres aren't necessarily pleased with what the Rangers have offered. So that's why they're kind of trying to circle back a little last minute on teams like Minnesota, LA, and Anaheim to see if they can come up with something better.
And Montreal,
Montreal has been rumored as well. But at the same time, though, it seems like the Rangers kind of have been from the get-go the team to beat right now. And is Kevin Adams going to be able to drop down? Is Kevin Adams going to be a little bit more interested in potentially drop down, knowing how good of a deal he got for Aristo that maybe they could take a little less? Or is he going to really try to hold the line? And I do expect Drury to do the same. I don't think he drastically overspend. I just have a slight worry because, again, this Buchnevich trade is not in the Mets' See, that's how my day is going. Not in the Rangers' favor whatsoever. So, yeah. So we got a bunch more comments, though. So let's get to it before we get out of here. Someone says, who do the Rangers take tonight in draft? A 2 Ratty would be sick to pair. Yeah, Ratty, he's a guy I like quite a bit. I know that he has not transitioned to men's hockey well. But to be quite honest, I don't see the Rangers drafting someone in the first round tonight. So I'm really not going to share too much more than that. If it happens, then we'll have a different discussion piece than what I was expecting next time we do an episode. Would you agree with that, Steven?
Yeah, I'll go into some names quickly before we move on to the next question. If they do pick, and it's not out of the realm of possibility, because yes, they want to trade the first round pick. They're not going to give it away for nothing. So unless Drury gets the value he wants, whether it be in a package for Eichel or a separate trade where he gets the player he wants, they're going to hang on to the pick and they're going to make their selection. I know they're big on Svechkov, who plays for Lada Togliatti in the Russian VHL. Other centers like Cole Sillinger, who's Mike Sillinger's son, he played in the USHL. Francesco Pinelli, who from the OHL, who played in Slovenia this year because the OHL was cancelled. Those are some options. Logan Stankoven of the Kamloops Blazers in the WHL is a name to look out for later in the first round, and that's another possibility. You know, if they think they can get their player later on in the first round, you could see a scenario similar to the Calgary Flames last year, where we trade down and maybe acquire a second round pick in the process. The Calgary Flames traded down 3 times, I think, last year before they made their selection.
Yeah.
And they still ended up with
You're absolutely right. I
remember in the first place. So that was a good deal.
Yeah, I see. We already got fire Drury people in the chat. Respectfully, please stop. All right, let's see. Let's see what the rest of the day. As much as we're upset with this, guys, you know, if we're gonna just fire a guy like hotcakes every single time they make a deal we don't like, by God, there's no point in even having people in management. All right, we're not like let's. I'm not happy about Buchnevich in this trade one bit, but by no means do I want Chris Drury to be fired anytime soon. Okay, so let's pump the brakes there, folks, because reality is as much as you want something to happen, it'll never happen. It will never happen the way you assume. Same way no one wanted or expected JD and Gordon to be fired the way they were when they were. You know, just come on. This is the New York Rangers. Let's be real here. Okay, so reading more of your comments, guys. Again, thank you all so much for being here that are in the live stream of this episode of Rangers Review. Let's see. We need something now. Why trade Bucha for not making room? My point exactly.
That was my point. He's not on the books now. If this was a player that was on the books for the next season, at least for $7 million, yes, there's some urgency to trade him. But he's an RFA. Worst case scenario, you let it go to arbitration, and you sign him for 1 year, like they did with Kevin Hayes, like I mentioned yesterday. Worst case scenario, you sign him for 1 year, you trade him at the deadline. I guarantee you the return at the deadline would have been better than what we got here. And I also have the feeling that in 2018, this may have been the offer for a guy like Kevin Hayes. And Gordon said, no, not going to do it. We'll sign him for 1 year and we'll trade him at the deadline. That would have been the better move, in my opinion. But it's too late now.
Yeah, too late now, indeed. Someone says here, should the Rangers shoot for Landeskog? I think he's a solid pivot. Should the Rangers not land Eichel? I'm not against Landeskog.
Look, if the Rangers are really going to use their cap space and they don't get Eichel, then there are going to be some interesting options. Landeskog, although I still think he's going to sign with Colorado, could be an option. Center, I don't know. I mean, he hasn't played center in the NHL. You know, he's been on the wing all the time, even though he took a lot of faceoffs. So we'll see. But if you want to go for a big money guy and Eichel's not there, then Landeskog could be an option. Or they could trade for Kuznetsov, like we mentioned yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, Drury doing his due diligence. And if the offer for Eichel is not good enough for Buffalo, and if Buffalo wants too much, then you just turn around and go to Washington and get Kuznetsov.
Yeah, I mean, that's another option as well. So I see the positives and negatives with Kuzi, though. I don't necessarily know how much upside there will be with him at this point in his career. But again, he's still very much a point getter. Maybe he needs a little bit of a change of scenery. I'm not sure, though. But
so he will be cheaper. He will be, I don't know when his contract ends, though. But I think his cap hit is around $7.5 million. So it's a little easier to fit under the cap. The return will be a little less than what they want for Eichel. So yeah, if the Rangers really want to hang on to those top prospects, and they should, in my opinion, then if Kevin Adams doesn't budge, then Eichel's not going to be a Ranger. He might play for the Minnesota Wild instead.
Yep. So now let's get on to a donation here, $2 donation from Josh. Thank you, buddy. In the live stream, at least, says, what would a package for Eichel look like? We've already talked about this plenty, but Steven, would you just kind of like to cultivate what you think is realistic still at this point in time? And maybe it's going to be completely off from what ends up being the case here potentially in the next couple hours.
Look, there's going to be some prospects that are going to go the other way, but it cannot be all prospects. I think Ryan Strome is going to be in it now that Buchnevich is gone. And the first round pick is definitely going to be part of it, but who are the prospects going to be? Is it going to be Kravtsov and Jones? Is it going to be Robertson and Hedel? I still think Lundqvist and Schneider are off limits. I just don't see them trading two defensemen that they just signed to their entry level contract before they even played one NHL game. If you want to trade Jones, I could see that because you've seen him on the ice in the NHL. You can assess how he does at this level, so a little bit with what you have with him. But the other two, you simply don't know, and it would just be too risky, especially with the flat cap. It's tough to say. Maybe they include a draft pick next year, a conditional one. where they go, if I go play 75% of the games, then the second round pick turns into a first or something like that to sweeten the pot. But that has to be something conditional. The conditional picks are still allowed, except for signing, except for contract situations. So the conditional pick we got for Zuccarello, where it would have been a first round pick if Dallas signed him to an extension, those kind of conditions are no longer allowed.
Yeah, and that's definitely important that we need to make note of. So I think with that being said, though, that's going to wrap up this episode, a quicker episode of Rangers Review, guys. So I appreciate everyone that came in during the live stream. And if you're listening to this on replay, wherever you get your podcast, thank you so much. So to recap again, the Rangers have, in fact, did a blockbuster move, but a very one-sided one, to put it lightly, that being Pavel Buchnevich being shipped off to St. Louis to the Blues in return for forward Sammy Blais, a 2022 second-round pick, and it is pending on if another deal is in the works for our Rangers. But rest assured, when something happens, if something happens, we will be here to talk about it, and hopefully it's something of the more positive note than this. So again, appreciate you all. Stay tuned. Keep those notifications on here on the channel, at least if you're watching this live through YouTube, for later today after the draft starts or around then. If something does transpire with the New York Rangers that is significant, other than a simple who would they acquire with the 16th overall pick, I should say. And again, thank you all so much for being here and chiming in wherever you get your podcasts. So Steven, any final words before we get out of here?
Yeah, you're calling it a blockbuster trade. It's a
one-sided.
It's a blockbuster trade for one team. It's not the Rangers. So
correct. Yeah. That's why I made note of the one-sidedness. But all right, guys, that'll do it. Hopefully we'll be back here within a couple hours, or by the time you listen to this, maybe on your podcast, you realize, oh my God, it was already a day or two later. So who knows? But thank you so much again, guys. And of course, Steven, no matter what, let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers always.